This is BROJO Online. Masculinity, confidence, and integrity with Dan Munro.
Alrighty, welcome back to BROJO Online once again. And today we're just going to cut straight through the bullshit cake through to something we talk about in almost every piece of content that I've ever done, but we never really talk about it directly like we're going to today, and that is neediness. That ugly thing that you never want to face, you don't want to see in others, you hate to see it in yourself. We're going to have a look at that directly today, and we're going to have a look at, most importantly, what you can do about removing it from your life as much as humanly possible. There's nothing wrong with neediness. In fact, to think there's something wrong with neediness is going to create most of it. But we do see that it quite clearly gets in the way of creating real connections. There's something rather repulsive about neediness. Something we feel like somebody's going to take something from us. So we're going to have a look at that today. So a lot of the examples I'll be giving today, and the context I'll be working with, will be the social world. Connecting with others either as friends, potential dating partners, family, so on, work colleagues. Neediness shows up without other people being around, but we're going to focus on the social world because that's where I see the most pain in my work. But the principles we talk about apply to anything. If you're needy about a job or money, if you're needy about, I don't know, whatever else people get needy about, these principles are the same. I will be stopping occasionally to have a sip of my coffee, thus, and then continuing. So, what is neediness? Let's break it right down. First and foremost, my favorite definition of it is emotional attachment to outcomes or results. So this is where you've looked into the future, you can see the potential for a certain result that you either wish to happen or you hope doesn't happen. And you become emotionally attached to that. You're feeling it before it even happens. And you're feeling that so strongly, or you want to feel a certain way so strongly, that you've become unwilling to put this potential outcome at risk. Or in the case of an outcome you don't want to happen, to risk it actually happening. You become emotionally committed to this thing going a certain way. So we see this all the time. I mean, a great example of this is being on a date with somebody and you're hoping to find a relationship. You've actually become emotionally attached to being in a relationship or emotionally attached to not being single. Something along those lines is happening, and when you go on the date, that's already there. You're already hoping for something, aren't you? So neediness is having that attachment to something that has not happened yet, something you cannot possess or do not yet possess or will never possess. And you have an emotional reaction to the idea that this thing could be taken away. Which leads us to the next factor around neediness is being unwilling to lose. This idea that you need this win to survive. That you are not prepared to sacrifice it. That you are prepared to sacrifice your integrity to obtain this win. And you're not prepared to sacrifice the win itself. That's really what neediness is, isn't it? You've decided that you need this thing. The word need being, I will die without it. Now a lot of people, when I describe the word need like that, they will backtrack and say, well, I don't feel that strongly about it. And yet when you watch their behavior, they behave as if it's a life or death matter. They have fight or flight response all the time, and they behave according to that fight or flight response. They will lie, cheat, steal, destroy their own grandmother in order to avoid risking losing this thing. And if that's not neediness, I don't know what is. So for all those people out there listening, we've all done it, haven't we? We've all been needy. I mean, we're born needy. And that was real neediness. Like, you leave a baby alone, it dies. Even if you give it food and shit, it still dies. It needs contact with other human beings. It needs love and attention. And neediness as an adult is simply clinging to this, isn't it? It's still feeling that you will not survive without certain key external things happening in your life beyond food, water, and shelter. So neediness, it creates this fear, doesn't it, that there's not enough. When it's in the dating scene, it's the fear that, there's only a certain number of people out there who will be a good fit for you, And every one of those people you fuck it up with, the number reduces, doesn't it? So that classic word scarcity coming up there. When it comes to, a job, people will stay in a shitty job because they get this sense that this is the last job available to them for some reason. They'll talk about things about how the job market's really tough right now and on, as if this is their last shot at a financial income. And if they lose this one, they will just die. They'll just become homeless and drink methylated spirits until they die. This is the kind of approach we see with this fear of scarcity. This unwilling to give up something, even if that something sucks. Willing to be in a relationship with an abusive person. Willing to be in a job where your boss is down your throat the whole time and you hate the fucking work. Willing to do all these things that really suck because you're scared of the alternative, which you believe is nothing at all. Is to not even have a thing. Not even a shitty thing. The idea that there is a scarcity of resources out there for humans. Despite the evidence that, 7 billion humans can be alive at any given time, and we seem to be getting along all right, if not happily. So what happens with this neediness? We have this attachment to outcomes. We're unwilling to lose those outcomes. We become afraid that those outcomes are the only ones available to us, if even that, and a strategy forms. We go from living in a sort of freestyle, values-based way, an integrity-based way, and we start to form a strategy as to how to keep or get the thing we're needy about. We want to avoid loss and avoid rejection, don't we? And we form a strategy to make sure that can happen. And it could be anything from being the class clown, that's kind of what my strategy was, avoid loss and rejection by being the one who makes everyone laugh the most, therefore has value in that sense. People who hoard, they hoard possessions, they hoard money, and I'm not just talking about documentary level hoarding, but anybody who's unwilling to sell or part with something they haven't used in 6 months, which is most people. That's neediness, isn't it? If you've got something in your closet that you just can't throw away in case you need it later, that's neediness, right? If you're unwilling to splash out on a little bit of travel because you're saving up for that big mystical house in the future, that's neediness. Neediness, the idea is that you need the thing that you're trying to get or that you already have in your possession. So strategy forms. I need to live a certain way, regardless of how I feel and regardless of what my values really are, in order to keep this thing or get this thing. This is where people can quite happily put down the honesty card and start living in a different way, can't they? They're out on a date and this obvious feeling of insecurity comes up and they think, well, that doesn't fit the strategy of keeping this person in my life. Maybe I've been doing pickup for a while or something like that, and they say, well, you've got to hide all your insecurities or otherwise they won't be attracted to you. So you think, well, strategy is hide insecurities, which means when insecurities come up, you now have to be dishonest, don't you? Strategy to keep money, to kiss your boss's ass so that you don't lose your job instead of speaking up for what you really believe in. These little strategies that start to take people away from their values. This is what you start to see when neediness shows up. Now, there's a lot of people out there who don't think of themselves as needy, and yet their life is full of strategy. Now, what I'd say to that is the reason you don't feel needy is because right now your strategy is working for you. You're simply keeping and getting, at least in your perspective, what you want to keep and get. And that's kind of keeping the wolf at the door there. That panic of anxiety and nervousness that comes from neediness is being kept asleep by your currently successful strategy. And that is one way to live. What we'll be talking about today is the way to live that doesn't require strategy. It sounds impossible, but I'm living it right now and I'm still alive. So we'll see how we go. That is good coffee. Okay. How to know that you're needy? It's the feelings, isn't it? Feelings of rushing is a great example of neediness. If you rush out the door to get to work, and if you're rushing to this and rushing to that, feeling like you haven't quite got everything done, there's neediness there. Panic and anxiety. Anxiety can only come when you have emotional attachment to something in the future. It's the only way you can have anxiety. Anxiety is based in the future. You cannot have anxiety about the present. You can't even have anxiety about the past. You can have anxiety about what the past might mean for your future. That's just anxiety about the future. So anytime you experience any form of nervousness or anxiety, there is an attachment to outcomes. There is an emotional wish attached to the future. And that is the beginning, if not complete, neediness. That is the start to thinking, this thing has to happen or otherwise I'm going to suffer in some way. I have to get or keep this thing or otherwise I'm fucked. Right? That kind of thinking. Frustration. When you believe yourself to have failed in some way, when expectations are not met and you feel disappointed. That's often a sign of neediness. One way to always look at it is, if I had no neediness, would I feel this way? Would I be frustrated if I didn't have any emotional attachment to any particular outcome happening? Odds are no. Now, of course, you're never going to get to the end of your life without some frustration. That's going to happen. Neediness is normal. This talk today is not about turning off neediness forever. It's about dealing with it when it comes up, and it will continue to come up for the remainder of your life. At least I think that's a helpful assumption to make. Because I'm yet to meet a human that doesn't have any. Yeah? I'm yet to meet one. Maybe it's just anecdotal evidence, but hey, I've met over, who knows, 10,000, 20,000 people in my life. So far, all I've seen is neediness. Eagerness. Hope. If you're looking forward to something, there's neediness there. Maybe not full blown, but if that hope leads to disappointment when it doesn't happen, you know it was neediness. If at all you're worried about what's going to happen, there's neediness there. And it's totally okay and totally human. However, it's going to fuck with you getting what you want. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Because the real thing around neediness is mistaking what you want for being something that you need. You might need love in your life, but the mistake is thinking that it's going to come from another person. You become needy about other people, when really all you want is love, which is generated from inside your own body. Mistaking want with need is where most of our suffering comes from. You do need water at least once every 3 days. You do need food at least once every 3 weeks. And you do need to protect yourself from exposure, or you can die within 3 hours. That is true. You do not need a partner. You do not need money. You do not need any of those things that are outside of the basic survival requirements. So neediness is when your brain has decided that something outside of those requirements is needed for your survival. And we're going to have a look at just dialing that back from need to want. So need is unwilling to lose, complete strategy, not willing to let life decide whether or not you get the thing. Want is saying that would be nice, and if it's aligned with my values, it will come into my life. Those are the differences that we're going to be looking at. We're going to dial back needy to want. There's nothing wrong with desire, there's nothing wrong with wanting something. But neediness is going to chase it away, and we're going to have a look at that now. So, talking about how does neediness affect us in everyday life? God, it's almost like starting with how doesn't it affect us. I see some people whose entire lives are based on needy strategies. As mine once was, and probably still has some parts of today. So how does it affect us? Basically, it's about strategy. We put our values aside, and we start to focus on strategy, a set of rules we believe we need to follow. Maybe those rules are something we call being polite. Maybe those rules are something we call professionalism. Maybe they're called being cool or being a good person. Maybe they're called pick-up artist techniques. Whatever they are, they're strategic approaches designed to minimize losses, retain and keep wins, and to overall look like a pretty awesome person to others. And we're willing to sacrifice our integrity to maintain a strategy. That's neediness. Neediness means that you don't speak your mind all the time. Neediness means that you will show the best self rather than the real self. And you can see there's a lot of this in the self-help industry. They always talk about showing your best self. And I always think, well, what about the rest of the shit? Your best self is a tiny slice of the pie, Your best self is 10% at most. What about all the other shit? What about the insecurities and the darkness? And even just the boring bits of being a human? How can you hope to have integrity if you're only showing the best? Right? So any strategy that's designed on either you looking your best, or as I often see, avoid being seen at all, the wallflower kind of strategy where you just fly under the radar to avoid anything bad happening, this is all needy strategies. That's how it affects us. We start to live by rules rather than values. And everything becomes acquisition based. We start to base our life around accumulation of things. Whether it's possessions, whether it's social validation and approval, the number of promotions we get, the number of numbers in our bank account. We're constantly future focused. We're looking to the horizon for the next goalpost, and as soon as we get to it, we don't even get to enjoy it. We just put another goalpost in place and we chase it. So we're running as fast as we can to the next goal and pretty much not able to enjoy the present in any real way. Because the present is simply what forms our strategy to get the future. And what this creates in the most needy people, but in almost anyone, is what I think of as an aura of desperation. You start to emanate neediness. It starts to seep out of your pores. It becomes obvious to those who are looking. It's not that obvious, as in, if I just walk past you on the street, I might not see it. But it's there in very subtle ways around micro-expression, body language, probably even pheromones. The way you feel that neediness starts to come out of you and make itself known to people. You'll know it when you're talking to somebody. You can feel it. You feel a pressure on your chest when they're needy. You can feel like this, I need to get the fuck out of here feeling, when you're trapped in a corner at a party by a needy person. You can even get it just in the way they text you back. There's something that triggers your defensiveness. Neediness is surrounding you. You've been noticing it your whole life. And yet it can be very subtle. It's this aura of desperation. When somebody is living by a strategy, you can feel it. You can feel when they're not listening to you and they're just trying to find words of yours they can use to uphold their strategy. A girl can feel it when you're using pickup techniques. You know, a guy can feel it when you're pretending to be interested in him, so that he'll be interested in you. They can feel it. And what this does is it triggers other people's security warning systems, doesn't it? You know, at least it triggers confident people. Now, neediness actually attracts neediness, so when you're being needy around other needy people, you're bound to bring them closer into your life, which of course leaves you with that old dilemma of, why do I only attract people I don't like? Or people who are toxic. Because confident people are repelled by neediness. Either they've dealt with it themselves and they don't want any more of it in their life, they don't want to risk a relapse, or they've never really been that needy and they just don't want to be around people who drain them. Or a mixture of both. What happens is it creates defensiveness and avoidance. When you're needy around someone, their radar goes off, doesn't it? Now if they're another needy person, their radar goes off with attraction. But if they're confident or self-sustained or the kind of person who would be actually quality in your life, their response is going to be, fear, basically. They're going to feel a repulsion and they're going to get defensive and they're going to do whatever they can to get the fuck away from you. And you'll see it. They will leave you, which of course is going to aggravate your neediness. You'll know what's happening when you see passivity. If you're unwilling to take risks, if you're waiting to see what will happen, if you're trying to react to things in a way that works for you, if you even think about, like this is what Mark Manson says in his great book, Models. If you're even thinking something did or didn't work, neediness is there. Non-needy people don't give a fuck if something works or not. They're just living by their values. That's not even an equation, part of the equation for them. But if you're thinking that worked or that didn't work, there's neediness there. At least a little bit. So passivity is usually trying to avoid something not working. Letting things just kind of cruise without you and jumping in when you think you see an easy win. Then you got worry. If you're worried a lot, if you worry about the future, it's an obvious sign of neediness and it's repulsive. Being around worrisome people is draining on the soul, isn't it? When you're around somebody like just trying to have a good time and all they can think about is what might go wrong in the future. It's like, dude, you're killing my holiday here. You're killing my buzz. That's there. Aggression. Quite often people try to dominate with their strategy. They use a strategy that's designed to really get what they want. Not just ask for it or hope for it, but go out and grab it off people, to take it. And you get that aggression. You can feel that with the pushy salesperson, who just won't let you say no. You can feel it with the person who just won't stop texting and calling, and when you say, look, I'm not interested, they get angry at you. You can see that aggression combined with disappointment. How people get needy about something they wanted from you, and when you don't provide that, they blame you. They act as if you did something wrong. People whose whole lives can be set up to revolve around somebody else, and then they'll punish that person if things don't go well. And in particular, like I was saying, like what Mark Manson says about something working or not working, it's when you start to look at things as being good or bad, right or wrong, failure or success. Something can only be a failure if you're needy. Something can only be bad or wrong if you're needy. If you're confident, it's just a result. It's just a thing that happened as a result of other things that happened. It's a matter of interest, intrigue. It's like what Tony Robbins says, there's no such thing as failure, there is only results. Failure is a thing you attach to what happened with your neediness. You attach neediness to something that happened. If it's what you wanted and you've got neediness, then you call it a success. And if it isn't what you wanted, you call it a failure. Either way, you're needy. But the most important point here to look at what neediness does is all of this adds together to push away what we want. It repulses the people that we want to be with. And it quite often puts us in a position where the way we act chases off the very thing we're trying to get. If I'm needy on a date, then a high-quality person won't call me back, so I'll push them away. If I'm needy for the promotion at work, I'll irritate my boss so he'll hire somebody else. There's this on and on effect. Every time I get needy about something, my behavior will subtly sabotage that thing. It's the most ironic thing I ever learned in my life when I just started letting go of winning. When I just started, going on a date without caring if it went into a relationship. I just wanted to see what happened. When I applied for a promotion just because I wanted to practice courage and strength building, not because I actually wanted to get the job. That's when I started winning, which of course then I got needy about later on. But when I was actually trying to get stuff, it was like pushing shit uphill. It was such a low success rate. So what can we do about it? Because that's the real question here, isn't it? You all know what neediness is. It's been in your life all this time. You wonder why trying doesn't seem to work. Any form of trying is neediness when you're trying for something external. When you're trying to build yourself internally, that's different. So what can we do about it? Well, the key factor here is that neediness requires secrecy to survive. Because ultimately, the strategy you use for neediness is a form of manipulation. Manipulation cannot survive in the light of day. It's a vampire. You cannot manipulate someone if they know you're trying to manipulate them. That's the beauty of it. If you want to make sure you're not manipulative, all you have to do is show how manipulative you are. You have to let people see the strategy and be willing to lose what it's trying to get you. So the key here is openness. It's not about preventing neediness. Really, I don't think that's possible. Even the most confident people in the world get it occasionally. They won't tell you about it sometimes. And the very fact that they don't tell you shows that there's neediness there. They want you to think of them in a certain way. I promise you, I've met some of the most confident people on the planet, I'm sure, and they've all revealed to me quite openly that they still have neediness. It's not going anywhere. But the way you react to it can change. From something that repulses people to something that actually connects with them. And it's all about openness. So that first factor, instead of trying to prevent it, focus instead on how you respond to it. And the very first thing you have to do in that process is simply notice that it's happening. So my question for you, and this is going to be a different answer for everybody, but I want you to stop and think about this. I'll have some coffee to allow you to do that. How do you know when you're being needy? I want you to think back to the last time when you were pretty sure you were being needy. The last time you scared off a date. The last time you asked for something and got a big no and got a repetitive no. The last time you got desperate and worried about something and disappointed when you didn't get it. Think back to that time. and ask yourself, what were the thoughts and feelings happening at the time of the neediness? What were the behaviors, So if I'm watching someone on a date, for example, a lot of needy behaviors I'll see would be laughing at a joke that's not funny, not talking about things that might reveal painful truths about yourself, instead keeping the conversation safe, like banter level. What else would I see? Talking up your strengths but downplaying your weaknesses. Pretending to be more interested in someone than you actually are, like pretending to find their job interesting when you don't even give a shit about it. Any form of pretense, really, is neediness behavior. Anything where you will let your integrity, go to sleep for a while in order to keep somebody else feeling a certain way. That's neediness. An inability to lose in any way, any form of behavior. If you're playing soccer and you lose the match and you go and challenge the score and ask the referee. I used to see this in dancing. The neediest people would go back to the judges and ask them to explain their scoring. That's neediness. Whereas I could lose and be like, fuck it, I lost. It doesn't actually affect my life. Who gives a shit? So having a look at your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors. Know when you're needy. Start to look for those warning signs. Like for me, I feel a rushing sensation when I'm needy. I start to rush through things like my task list is too big for the amount of time I have available. I know that's neediness now. Anxiety, that's another one. If I worry about something happening or how it's going to happen, it doesn't happen to me very often anymore. It used to happen all the time, literally all day long. I know that's neediness now. And hoping for something. Making plans based on something else needing to happen, like planning a picnic and hoping for sunshine. That's neediness. The second thing, once you've noticed it happening, is to qualify it. What's up, guys? Thank you so much for listening thus far. You are listening to a free version of this podcast. The paid versions are exclusive to our BROJO members. Now, in the paid version, you get the end part of the podcast where I go into how-to practical advice to deal with the issues that were raised. And also, the members have access to the download function. So members can download the podcast to listen to later. Now, I don't expect anyone to pay for the content, so if you want to keep listening to the free stuff, you go right ahead. You'll be able to stream it live online. And if you're interested in becoming a member and getting access not only to the advanced levels of the podcast, but also to the BROJO University online courses, which include things like the Nice Guy Recovery Program, how to find and discover your core values, and how to build a social circle. Those all come with the BROJO University access for $19 a month. Just $19 a month, and you can quit any time. If you're keen for that level of engagement, go to brojo.org. That's brojo.org, and look up BROJO University. Otherwise, continue to enjoy all the free value that BROJO has to offer, and I'll catch you next time.